Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycle Works, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing the knowledge from experienced bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry.
All right, team, welcome back to Cycling Demystified, your podcast for all things bike fitting, including the art, science, and people behind bike fit. And you are listening to part 3 of the Asymmetry series. We have been talking about all things asymmetry when it comes to bike riding. Part 1 was all about how to think about asymmetries, why you might care about asymmetry, why it occurs on the bike, why it matters for bike riding. So if you haven't listened to that, that's a good place to start. Start at the beginning. Last week was part 2, and we talked about the equipment setup and how your bike and your equipment can affect your asymmetry and why it matters to have the right bike fit, create the right bike environment for your body so that it can create the best kind of movement that it can do, which is usually as balanced and as symmetrical as we can get to. But the other half of the equation is the body, the human body, you, the engine. So we're going to talk all about that today. We are going to talk about what asymmetries we might expect to see in your bodies, where we might see them, and how that may translate over onto the bike, how you may feel that on the bike, and maybe some techniques to understand your body a little bit better. So maybe some tests and just some ideas to explore so you can better understand yourself and your movement so that you can create better movement on the bike. That's quite a lot. Yeah, it's quite a lot there. And well, we'll see how far we get today. We might have to create some bonus episodes, part 4 maybe, because as we've been speaking off camera, there's also a psychological element, I think, which is probably important to talk about. But let's talk about the body. Let's get into why bodies are important and how we can tune this engine of ours. Because as we say, bikes don't ride themselves. We are the engine, so we power the bike forward. And your performance is, I was going to say limited, not limited, but determined by the capabilities of your engine. But if there's something holding back that performance, that ability to create good pedaling movement, then there's some performance gains that are being left on the table. And that could be also, I talk about performance in terms of, what you want to be able to achieve on the bike, and that includes comfort. So, if your performance goal is to be comfortable on the bike, then, that's a worthy thing too. So where should we start, Matt? Where should we go dig into this hole? I was thinking...
So I guess this assumes that your bike position is in a good place.
Yes. So we've talked about, why we care about asymmetry. So you definitely care about that already. You've gone through your bike position. You've figured out that your bike fit is as good as it can be, and it's not creating more challenge to your body than it needs to. And maybe you're still feeling some asymmetries, like there's a difference between left side of the body and right side of the body.
So I think it's kind of like first off determining or managing expectations.
Yeah.
So every human is asymmetrical.
Yeah.
Just by the fact the way you're put together. The way your internal organs are arranged, the way your diaphragm is kind of like thicker, heavier on one side. So most people kind of have like a dropped right shoulder to some degree. So I think what we kind of need to do is set the stall out and kind of lay the foundation of we're not expecting 50-50 perfect symmetry, because that is never going to happen just because of the way you're put together.
Yeah.
So perfect symmetry is kind of like, while we can strive for perfect symmetry, we need to realise we're never going to get there.
Yeah.
because that's just not how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
So I think what we're looking for is a level of function and symmetry that allows you to do what you want to do and not be restricted by any pain and discomfort that you're not in control of. Would that be a reasonable kind of way to set the stall out?
Yeah. I think the buzzword there was control.
Yeah.
So whatever we do, we want to have an idea of what we can control and what we can't control. If you go ride your bike, then you can control how hard you push on the pedals, how far you go, but you can't control the weather.
Yeah.
But you can control, the clothing that you wear and so on. So there's definitely degrees of control in how you move. And some of that is determined by your bike position, so your bike fit will literally create the environment in which your body has to move, like how much you have to extend your legs, how much you have to reach towards the handlebars, etc., etc. But I don't know, people talk about pedaling technique, don't they? And
so in my mind it's pretty simple, right? The more capacity your body has to absorb load, the more load it's going to be able to absorb, and the more you'll be able to tolerate a wider window of kind of fit, if you like. So, if you're kind of someone who is sensitive to very small changes and things start to kind of like, fall off the wagon, so to speak, after kind of a very small change, or after, a certain time frame on the bike, or, pushing at a certain kind of like intensity for a certain amount of time, then if you've exhausted every aspect of your bike position, then you maybe need to look introspectively at kind of like, right, how can I increase my body's capacity, because I currently can't manage the load of the duration of my event, the intensity that I want to ride at, or whatever it is. So then you have to somehow increase your capacity to absorb and then deal with the load that you are trying to put on your body, right? And this can mean lots of different things. So in the context of what we're talking about, asymmetry, so if you have something that kind of shows up in one place of your body consistently over and over again, so it might be your left knee, for instance, so it might be your kind of like the lateral aspect of your left knee, so like a classic kind of like IT band kind of discomfort or pain. If that is kind of like consistent and it's always on that same side, that same kind of like, kind of area, then what you might want to look at is the root cause of why that discomfort keeps showing up. And usually in terms of kind of like bike riding, a single-sided discomfort will likely appear from a compensation that's being made for either poor positioning, which we talked about previously, or a lack of capacity that's causing a compensation and for you to overload one side of the body or one area of the body because it can't handle the load it's being asked to deal with.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to kind of start in terms of just understanding whether it's body or bike that is affecting the way that you feel on the bike. So yeah, a really good way of, I guess why we started with like talking about the bike position and the bike fit and changing your equipment is because that's the kind of easy wins. Like if you can move your seat up and down, move the saddle around, change the saddle, change your position, it's all pretty easy stuff. If you've changed all of the easy things and you're still not getting the results, and there is the same pain in the same location, then it probably points to the fact that it's not the bike that was, the driver for that discomfort and pain. Now, we talked about this earlier as well, whether it's chicken or egg, like, have you become asymmetrical because of a poor position that's driven your body to assume a slightly skewed posture? Or has something else happened in your life at some point that's driven a dominance on one side or skewed posture? and that's just basically presenting on the bike at the same time. That question should arise. In many ways, as you've said in the past, Matt, it doesn't really matter because you've still got to solve the problem. And if you can start by eliminating the bike fit from the equation, then that's an easy way forward. So usually start with getting the bike right and the bike position as good as it can be, or moving all the bits around, just seeing if that affects how you carry your posture. If that doesn't change, then you can really get to work on the body, because that's where you'll probably make the biggest gains.
Yeah.
Because if you can't move symmetrically enough away from the bike, then you can't expect yourself to move symmetrically on the bike and therefore feel balanced on the bike too. I think that's the key message.
Yeah, and I think kind of like the other kind of thing with this is that a lot of people need to manage their own expectations of how good their bike is going to feel. Like I've kind of like changed my thought process on this a little bit. So I used to say, the bike's 50% of the system, the body's 50% of the system. I actually think the body is way more heavily weighted than the bike.
Sure.
Because you can only move, 10 things around on the bike? The 10 pillars of bike fit. Go listen to it. But, like you said, once you've exhausted all of that kind of low-hanging fruit and your bike position is in a good place, and, if you're still getting kind of like niggles, discomforts, like all this kind of stuff, you've got work to do. The bike won't do it for you. Like a 30 grand bike is just as uncomfortable as a 300 pound bike.
Yeah. It's not going to ride itself.
It's not going to ride itself.
Yeah.
So this is where, and we live in 2026, right? It's the world is not set up for optimal human function. Life has hit people really freaking hard. Especially a lot of the people that we see. Like, it has like literally smashed people in the face. And you got to own it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to own the fact that you might actually be woefully dysfunctional in terms of your capacity to do a symmetrical task over and over again for hours on end. And even just coming to terms with that can be a massive, kind of door opener.
Yeah.
That you can kind of like work on the things that are going to be meaningful to improve your experience on the bike, rather than just chasing your tail for the latest and greatest, most betterest saddle or whatever it is. So even just kind of, and we talk about the psychological aspect of it, just even owning the fact that you might be the problem is massive, because then you can start working meaningfully towards making it better.
Yeah.
So, and we have these conversations every day. So what can I buy that's going to make me more comfortable? Well, actually, what you can buy is a 12-month gym membership and some personal training, and maybe a trip to see a physio or a postural kind of expert, and start working on yourself.
Yeah.
But that's not sexy. But that's where the gains are. But it's like you say, if you've exhausted all those kind of avenues with regard to your bike position, then you can not waste time by looking at that and start to look on what's going to make a meaningful impact.
And I think it's important to note that it's not necessarily people's fault that
not at all.
They don't often realise how dysfunctional, shall we say, or lack the necessary capacity, because we do live in a world that is challenging for our bodies to maintain a degree of capacity or the ability to kind of do the hard things that we want to do on bikes. The classic one at the moment is like everyone wants to do an Ironman, but that's really, really hard. It's a hard thing to do, but it's very easy to just buy the ticket.
It's very easy to enter. It's a lot harder to actually do.
Yeah. But coming in for a bike fit is often the task of holding up the mirror, and through the process of spending time and talking with somebody and showing them, like, it's only until really you see kind of what your body is actually doing, then you start to understand why, there could be a better way. It's like holding up the mirror. But it's really difficult to see yourself and feel yourself. So, people, you probably won't realize that you're kind of moving asymmetrically because your body has essentially normalized that movement. And I think that's really important to realize that, your body will have chosen a way of moving based on all the history and experience that it's had and the sports that it's been exposed to. Let's say if you've been a rower or a golfer or a tennis player or anything that is more single side biased, or throwing sport or hockey sport, a stick sport, then you will have learned movement patterns, and as long as that's not caused any injury or trauma, then the body will have normalized it, and what looks asymmetric becomes what feels like it's balanced. And so you'll bring that history and movement pattern to a symmetrical sport, and then suddenly that really highlights the asymmetry that you inherently have. So this is why it becomes important.
Yeah. I think the other aspect with that, though, is that it can be changed.
Yeah. That's
so
the key.
This is the key thing, right? It's, learned movement patterns are not an excuse. And it might be really challenging to get out of these patterns, but we're not looking for, like we said right at the top of this podcast, we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for improvement.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a move in a positive direction, right?
Yeah.
So this kind of, we get this a lot, right? So we do a lot with shoes, feet, obviously, insoles, wedging, etc., etc. And as soon as you start talking about feet, like, we get the comment, a lot of the time, oh, I've got flat feet. All right, cool. Well, what are you going to do about it? So, oh no, that's it. I've been like, I went to a podiatrist years ago, and they told me I've got flat feet. Yeah. Okay, well, you can change that. And awareness is the first thing. So being aware that you can actually change things about your movement patterns is the first thing. But then also not using that as an excuse to just kind of like, oh, well, this is how I am, this is what I've got, etc., etc. You're only going to be as good as the work you put in. Like, I've spent the last 12 years trashing my body. Like, we haven't got enough time to list all the injuries that I've had. Yeah. But it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you have to seek knowledge from the right people. But with diligent work, you can come back to a level of doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's all about kind of just moving in the right direction and putting in the effort consistently over time, which will get you, more further towards where you want to be. Yeah. So set movement patterns that you have now can be changed. You just have to kind of figure out what they are, what you can do about it, and be consistent and diligent enough to be able to give it time in order to kind of work through those patterns and manage your own expectations that we're not looking for perfection.
Yeah, this is the problem that we faced. I think we mentioned it on the first episode, of where it's really easy to like kind of buy stuff, and I think we work within a technology-based sport where buying stuff and your bike itself is an important part of the sport. You can't do bike riding without a bike and all the bits that go with it. But then all the bits that go with it sell you so many kind of potential false dreams in terms of like, power meters that, give you a 50-50 balance. Like that, I can't tell you how many emails I get every week about people or from people that are like, oh, I'm getting a 46, like 54, like power balance
52
to 52 power balance, or my offset of my power is 5 mil on my right and 0 on my left. Like, something's really wrong. And it's like, well, is it? Is it really wrong? Like, do you feel any pain or discomfort? Do you are you losing kind of what? What is this actually telling us? And so begins the conversation of like, the technology is there as a kind of way of being curious. really, rather than telling you answers.
You're a more positive person than I am.
Yeah. but that's what it should be. It's like, okay, what it should create a question within you of like, well, what does this actually mean? Does it mean left-right balance is, way off? Or is that kind of normal? Is that an acceptable level of differential? And this is where pain comes into it. Like the vast majority of people come in here because they're in pain or discomfort of some kind, and they know it's not right. And like pain is your body's way of trying to tell you that, something could be better, and therefore, we want to see if we can improve that. And 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it's single-sided pain. It's very rare we get like pain in both knees at the same time in the same place. And so asymmetry is like just an inherent part of
being human.
Yeah, being human, your movement, and so on. But it should elicit some curiosity within you of like, well, why is it just my right knee and my right hip on my left lower back? Is there a connection there? Is it, why am I getting saddle sores just on like my inner left thigh and not on my right thigh? And all of that gives you a clue as to kind of how you're moving and why you're moving in that way. Is it because I had, a tibia fracture on my right side, and therefore I'm dropping into my kind of right leg a little bit more, and that means I sit a little bit more over to my right side of my saddle, and that rubs my left inner thigh because it's contact in the saddle more. Okay, there is a structural kind of difference and trauma that's happened, and I can't change that. But what can I do to like kind of improve that symmetry then? Can I get my body to kind of load that left-hand side a little bit more and take some of that kind of weight away from the right-hand side? And once you start going down that avenue, I think you can find better results.
I think you start looking in more productive places. For results. I think the cycling industry massively overemphasizes the benefits of I'm going to use the word new, but in inverted commas, technology, because none of it's new. The bicycle hasn't changed that much in donkey's years. But everyone, or a lot of people in the industry at large, because it wants to sell you stuff, vastly overemphasize the importance or the kind of like the gains from purchasing XYZ product. Whereas, like you take Colin, for instance, he rides around on a specialised alley he bought off eBay for 250 quid. I guarantee you he's faster than 99% of people that rock around regions in his jeans and a pair of Vans. Like, it's not about the bike. Well, it is until it isn't. But so looking at things with a critical eye, not only your equipment, but your body as well, will often kind of like present an avenue to kind of explore, which will probably be a more productive one than just throwing money at a problem that might not be solved by a new piece of technology or a different component or whatever it is, or even a new bike.
Okay, so let's get into some specifics. So let's talk about something we haven't talked about yet, which we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about feet. We can talk a little bit more about like kind of body function. We may touch upon like kind of injuries and things like that a little bit later. But I think feet is something I think I've been wanting to talk about through this series, but we haven't had an opportunity yet. We've covered all the other things. Something we kind of work on a lot on a day-to-day basis with all our kind of riders as well. But why do we care about feet? Why are feet important?
Well, feet are everything, aren't they?
But why are they everything?
So, all right. So in my mind, like fundamentally, your body is trying to manage its relationship to gravity. Bear with me. So when you're as a kind of like a bipedal being, when you're vertical, when you're standing upright, your body is pretty good at managing itself relative to gravity, because you get a lot of practice at it, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of compensations that a lot of people make in order to maintain that relation or manage that relationship to gravity and not fall over. But generally speaking, most people can function stood up. They can go about their daily business in some way, shape, or form, in some degree of kind of like functionality, right? So the way your body kind of gets feedback of where it is in space relative to gravity is through your feet, right? So when you kind of are stood on a hard, stable surface, or any kind of like, fairly solid kind of ground, you're getting so much feedback from your feet as to where you are in space that it's all subconscious. Like, your brain can't process all the information, but your body, your central nervous system is managing where you are in relation to gravity. All this comes through your feet. And then what happens at your feet affects what happens with your kind of like pelvis, and then where your head is in relation to your pelvis and your feet and your rib cage. It all has an effect on how you manage yourself in relation to gravity. On a bike, you don't have a stable surface like the ground to kind of get that feedback. So the ground effectively becomes the shoe, and your interface between the foot, the shoe, and the pedal. And that is the only feedback you have on a bike as to where you are in relation to gravity. The other kind of conundrum with this as well is that on a bike, your head is way further forward relative to your foot, which is why hip hinge mechanics are really important, but that's a story for another day in balancing that kind of equation. But essentially, if your feet aren't stable and supported and able to function well on the bike, then you're going to have a challenge in managing your relationship to gravity. And usually that results in compensations or asymmetries. Compensations being that you might load one foot that has slightly more proprioception than the other one. You might be smashing your hands into the handlebars in order to kind of like support yourself on the bike, or your pelvis might be getting a lot more pressure through it than you might want. So kind of making sure that your feet are A&1 functional, in the fact that they can, they're strong, they have inherent intrinsic foot strength, that your kind of like foot can create stable kind of shapes, so there is kind of like an arch to your foot. And 2, that you can kind of get feedback from the base of your foot to send to your brain to kind of give you a reference point as to where you are in space is really, really important. That was really long-winded, but hopefully that makes sense.
Cool. I'll try and break it down a little bit more, shall I?
Go on.
So, like, again, coming back to my favourite analogy, I like to think of your feet as your foundations. Like, if you are a tall building, then you have to have solid foundations in order to stay standing. And
stack everything on top
and to stack everything on top of it. And then if you want to create force, like down through your feet into the pedals, then you better make sure that your feet are nice and solid and strong, both to be able to absorb and transfer that force, but also direct the force in the right direction. Like, it's not going this way or that way in every way. So that's why stability matters. You can direct force in like a meaningful direction and not lose it in lots of different directions. But also you can stack everything, your body weight and your head on top of your feet.
Well, this is why we like squats, right? So squats are a really good proxy for bike riding.
Yeah.
And if you're kind of stable and supported through your feet doing a squat, you can manage yourself relative to gravity, and you can push way more weight than you would if you were kind of standing on like a really soft mattress or a Bosu ball or something. So having that stable base to stack everything on top of, vitally important, regardless of whether you're riding a bike or not.
So your feet play a pretty important part. But as you were saying, Matt, like every little compensation or movement choice that your body's made through your foot has a ripple effect all the way up. So what's the classic kind of...
So here's one, right? So there's one I see a lot. So when we measure people's feet, we often see like a discrepancy in length, in
Yep.
width between one foot and the other.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of normal.
Yeah, most people know.
Most
They're
people know
like,
that.
oh, this is my bigger foot.
Yeah, exactly. But it's where that asymmetry comes from,
Yeah.
which, like you said, has a ripple effect further up.
Yeah.
So one thing that kind of I tend to look for is not only kind of, so I tend to measure seated and standing,
Yeah.
because I want to see what the foot does when it goes from passive to loaded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can that rider kind of like splay the foot as it's loaded? Does that arch drop? Is there any movement whatsoever? And does the foot get longer and wider as it loads?
Yeah.
And is there a difference between one foot and the other? So
Yeah.
often what we'll see is that you'll get way more kind of like movement and kind of like pronation
Yeah.
through one foot relative to the other. So if I use myself as an example,
Yeah.
my right arch used to be like super rigid and super locked.
Yeah.
And I basically had a real challenge getting it to kind of drop and pronate. Whereas my left one, I had a lot more movement through. Fast forward 2 years and a torn plantar fascia later, it's the other way around. My left foot's super stiff and
Yeah.
barely moves, yet my right foot has a bit more kind of like pronation through it
Yeah.
now. So it can change, but what that will often do is, depending on kind of like how stiff or kind of like how lax one foot arch is relative to the other, that often creates a ripple effect further up the chain into the kind of the hips, and that's where we can kind of see some asymmetry on the bike as well as off the bike. But often it's hips and feet are like chicken and egg. Like you don't really know, and it doesn't really matter where it kind of comes from. You have to address both.
Yeah.
But often by stabilizing the feet and giving the feet kind of like appropriate proprioception on both sides, which can mean different interventions in different feet depending on who you're dealing with, that can often have a positive effect further up the chain as well.
Yeah. I think you can demonstrate this with some really simple kind of exercises. You can do this now if you're listening to it. Like if you just stand up and preferably look at yourself in the mirror and just notice how you're standing. Like, are you stood completely upright and symmetrically? Is one shoulder dropped? Is like one hip dropped? Is one hip in front of the other? And just kind of take some nice deep breaths in, kind of try and relax the body, and then have a look again and just see, where your starting point is. And then if you want a little demonstration of like kind of how the ripple effect works, all you have to do is slightly bend one knee and kind of lean forward into that side just a little bit. And you'll notice that as you lean forward with that knee, maybe that foot, let's say I'm leaning forward with the right knee, maybe my right foot will, because you're loading it a little bit more, will just kind of pronate a little bit more, that arch will drop a little bit, and so that knee kind of rolls inwards a little bit, forwards and inwards. But then the hip will also kind of roll forwards and inwards because it's attached to your knee and your leg. And then you might find that, as you twist your hip forward, then your right shoulder and your arm comes forward as well. And so it feels like, you can reach forward with the right side a little bit more. And that might just put a little bit more stress into the left lower back because you're kind of twisting forward a little bit. And that will change kind of where you're looking. So all of these, like everything you do, like from like, your big toe up to the top of your head, it's all connected, and so everything has an effect. So that's why feet become really important, and understanding what your preferences are and how you load, what your patterns are, become important. And if we're thinking in a bike context, this is why cleat positioning, arch support becomes like critical in terms of being able to help the feet back into a more balanced position. Like there's definitely important ways that we can use our equipment to kind of affect how our body feels and so on. But again, the first step is awareness. Where are your preferences? Gary Ward has a kind of a great foot course which can guide you through the whole of this process. But one of the first things he just gets you to do is to stand up barefoot on a hard surface and just close your eyes and just sense where the weight is going through your feet. And more than likely it won't be exactly equal on both sides. Like, do you just standing there not doing anything at all, do you feel more weight into your right foot or your left foot? Is it at the front of that foot or is it at the back of the foot? And then what about the other side? Might be, you might feel more weight into the front foot on the right side, but more the left heel. And then is it on the outside or inside of the foot? And so on and so on. And so, just where you feel those pressures will build up a picture of kind of how you are standing relative to kind of actually what gravity is doing to you.
Yeah. I think the important thing here is that although foot support, all this kind of good stuff that we do with like insoles and wedging and cleat position and shoes on the bike, your foot is passive, really, in a cycling shoe.
Yeah, so now we're getting to cycling specifics.
Yeah, you have to have a base level of inherent function and stability away from the bike in order for the bike to feel better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, it's all very well just slamming an insole in and wedging it to the nines and whatever, but if your foot doesn't function well on its own, you're only going to get so far.
It's just like any other part of your body. Like the foot has muscles in it, and if you use the muscles, then they'll be strong and they'll be able to do their job well. For whatever reason, some people's feet don't want to do that much work, and so that load gets transferred elsewhere. The body, as you said, the body's like the ultimate yes man. It would find a way of getting the work done. And the choices it's made are just based on experience. It will have, if someone says they've got flat feet, basically their arches have dropped and there's not much arch definition in there. Something's happened at some point which has made the body decide that is the best strategy to get through what it needs to do, is to kind of lower that arch for whatever reason.
I think the most important thing here is that flat feet they're not necessarily inherently bad if you're able to control that range of motion and that movement and have the inherent stability and strength to be able to function well in that kind of movement pattern, right? Just like high arches aren't necessarily a good thing either. If you can't, kind of function well within that kind of like movement pattern, right?
Yeah.
So it's all bad or good until it isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just because like your foot is a certain shape or does a certain thing, like if you're not getting any pain or discomfort, then that might be okay.
Yeah.
But could it be better?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing.
And that pain or discomfort might be symptomatic somewhere else in your body.
Yeah.
At your hip. If your knees drop inwards all the time, then have a look at your feet first. Like, do you have lowered arches? And if you do, then your feet don't currently have as much capacity to kind of hold the knees in maybe a more linear or aligned fashion that will help you come out of that pain.
Well, I think we kind of have to look at the feet and the hip together, and then the knee is a result of what happens at each end, right? So the knee is caught between your hip and your foot, which is two ball and socket joints. And as we discussed last time, that we need to think of movement as rotary in 3 dimensions rather than just a series of levers and hinges. So what happens at the foot can have a direct effect at the hip, which in turn may influence your knees. Right? And what we see a lot of is that if we kind of can help activate certain parts of your foot, then we might get a change at the hip, which will then in turn may provoke a change at the knees. And also further up as well, but for the sake of this we'll go lower body. So the foot is an amazing piece of kit, and if you can't activate certain parts and you're missing proprioception through certain bits of your foot, then that will affect how your muscles and the kind of firing sequence and activation sequence further up will kind of may or may not work, right?
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about big toes.
Yeah.
And being able to kind of like feel a tripod contact between your big toe, your little toe, and your heel.
Yeah.
And what this does, it creates like it triangulates like a tripod, right? And you want the biggest tripod possible to create the most stable base from which to stack everything on top.
Makes sense, right?
Power.
The bigger the tripod, the more you can stack on top of it.
Exactly.
If you've got a small base of support, then you're going to be very unstable. So you don't want that.
So if you're like, and there's more than one tripod in your foot. It's not just first, fifth, met head, and your heel.
Yeah.
You could have a tripod between your second and fourth and your heel, or your second and fifth, or your second and third. What you want, like you say, is the biggest stable base. Now, if you can't activate certain parts of your foot, usually kind of like the more medial aspect of your foot, so the inside, so through your big toe, get that connection through your big toe, the inside of your heel, whilst maintaining contact through the outside of your foot, then your hip, so usually kind of your posterior and your posterior lateral hip, isn't going to work quite as well as it could do. So, in layman's terms, we're talking glutes. And different glutes have different jobs, but, we throw them all together for the sake of simplicity. But stability is created through contact at the foot and good posterior hip and posterior lateral hip activation, which then, if you get that right on both sides, should create or improve your symmetry on the bike, so you can load each side as evenly as possible.
So, there's two, I think, just kind of simplifying it again into, I think there's two aspects of like feet that we want to get right. So one is the structure of your foot solid, and does it have enough strength to create the kind of right shapes, the right structure, the right posture in order to support the rest of your body. And then secondly, you were talking about proprioception, which is just basically your body's awareness for where it is in space. Like, again, you're designed to run and walk, so, put your foot against the ground and sense what's underneath it, and so that will tell the body where to load, etc., etc. So, your foot is a sensory organ. It basically like brings information up. So, if you're the more aware your foot is, or the more tuned your foot is, then the better information your body has, and therefore the better movement it can create.
But when you walk, you go through gait, right? And you're loading different parts of your foot at different times throughout the gait cycle to then create a reaction further up the chain, whether you're going into flexion, extension, whatever kind of like part of the cycle you're in. On a bike, there is no gait. Your foot is essentially way more passive, so this is where you need help.
You saying that cycling's really bad for feet?
Yeah, it's awful. Awful for your feet. It is, right? Because your feet don't really do much. You're just smashing them into a carbon fibre object.
You're just entombing your feet inside shoes. There's no movement of your foot, which is what your foot is designed to do. It's designed to really move and flex. And so, actually, one of the downsides of cycling is if you just do a lot of cycling, you actually get pretty weak feet. So see a lot of cyclists with pretty weak feet because they don't actually load their feet very much in the way that your feet have been designed, creating tension. And so, I don't know for sure, but like I'd imagine like a big driver for lowered arches and kind of flatter feet profiles is, just doing a lot of cycling and nothing else, because your foot just loses tension, or your arch does anyway. So an interesting test, I would say, let's get into some practical bits, like would be just to see right now, if you've got shoes or socks on, take them off. First of all, can you lift your toes up off the ground, but keep the balls of your feet still stuck on the ground? All your toes, up, down, up, down, up, down. If you can do that, great. You've got movement in the toes. Next thing to do would be try and keep all the little toes on the ground, but just lift your big toe off the ground. keeping the little toes grounded and nice and stable without rolling your foot in or out as well. Like how high can you actually lift that kind of big toe up off the ground in a controlled way? And if you feel like you have to kind of roll your foot, then you're kind of getting out of that kind of range that it you can get to, and your body's trying to get that range by rolling the foot a little bit more. If you can't even lift your big toe on its own without the other little toes, then you've definitely got some work to do. There should be independent movement of your toes, and that big toe in particular, because that big toe, interesting fact, if you chopped your big toe off, you just wouldn't be able to walk, because that is such a vital stability anchor for your entire foot. It basically controls kind of how your foot moves. We'll put some links in the description about kind of big toes and so on. And yeah, as you were saying, Matt, it basically activates an entire chain of tendons, movements, muscles, fascia up through your body, and kind of turns on certain muscles like your glutes and things like that.
So your toes should, if you really work at it, they should be as dexterous as your fingers.
Yeah, it should be.
That's an unrealistic expectation, but if you really want to see what's possible, there's a Paralympic archer, can't remember the geezer's name, but he basically...
Oh, the foot, the foot archer.
He is a very, very skilled archer with his feet.
Yeah.
And it is wild to watch. So it can be trained. You don't need that level of dexterity, to kind of go through the world, functioning well. But if you, like you said, if you can't even kind of lift your kind of toes off the ground, you got work to do.
Yeah, and you should be able to do it the other way too. So big toe down, little toes up, and which way you can go may tell you where the work needs to go as well. Yeah. So.
One of the other things that we see as well is that kind of feet have been compressed, and I think where you're going is kind of this, if you anchor your big toe into the ground, can you spread and splay your foot into a kind of a wider kind of foot stance?
Are there gaps between your toes, essentially? So you were talking earlier about training your foot to be more dexterous. Well, we've actually trained our feet in the opposite direction, quite a lot of us, especially if you're someone who has worn dress shoes with pointy toes, or city cycling shoes,
or Adidas Sambas,
then you've basically trained your foot into a more compressed, unnatural, kind of pointy shape.
And passively trained it at that.
Yeah,
you haven't done this intentionally.
You've just kind of squashed your foot into that kind of shape.
It's like foot binding.
Yeah, exactly. And then you wonder why you can't stand on one leg.
Yeah.
So if we can do that just by passively, then imagine what you could do if you consciously trained your foot in kind of other ways. And so there's usually massive opportunities in bike fitting and kind of creating better performance and comfort just through getting people into the right shaped shoes, getting the right level of arch support, giving people ideas on how to move their feet better, little simple exercises like kind of lifting toes, getting independent toe mobility going, standing on one leg more often. Cycling is a single leg sport. You're always pushing down on one leg and then the other. So, if you struggle to stand on one leg and, struggle to stay stable there for 30 seconds a minute, then you've definitely got a lot of work to do, because if you can't even stand on one leg with stability, then how can you expect to kind of pedal efficiently? So all these little things can actually add up. We like to try and keep things simple if we can, in terms of what people take away from the session. So.
Well, when you're dealing with humans, it's rarely simple, and it's rarely a one solution fits all, right? So this is where you've got to do a bit of critical thinking and figure out what you need. You might have perfectly functioning feet, and your feet function well.
Great.
But your head might be not stacked on top of your ribs, which might not be stacked on top of your pelvis, which might cause compensations at your foot.
Yeah.
This
thing could go in all kinds of different directions.
We haven't got enough time in the week to do this.
Because every part of your body has some kind of asymmetries. We could get into jaws. and you know how that affects your posture overall.
Yeah.
You know, the tension in your jaw, which eye is dominant, and then you know, I guess we should probably talk a little bit more about hips and like the twists that we see. Probably the most common one that we see, and I imagine it's because most people are kind of like right side dominant. But certainly most commonly in the studio we just see this kind of right hip drop and right hip forward rotation. It seems to be very common for some whatever reason.
I think it's like pretty common outside of our world of bike fit as well. Like just as we were saying right at the top, like your internal organs are arranged in such a way that they are asymmetrical. And it seems to be that the right side of the body is heavier. And that might be a potential cause of it. A lot of people actually, you know, if you think about kind of how you sit, a lot of people sit right over left.
Right leg over
left. So that kind of right hip dropped, more internally rotated. It's easier to bring over the left side, which will in turn create a potential muscular imbalance of kind of, you know, dominance towards like maybe kind of like anterior chain, like tighter hip flexors, tighter quads, less glute activation on that right side, more glute activation on the left side, all this kind of stuff. I mean, and it's very individual. Again, I'm just chucking stuff out here, but like overwhelmingly common compensation that we see is, like you said, dropping into the right side, moving that right hip forward on the bike in order just to kind of like load that right leg.
And that leads to, so like the really common patterns that we see is kind of a little bit more kind of right quad dominance because you're leaning it forward into the right side, a bit more pressure onto the right hand. And interestingly, left and lower back pain and left knee pain, because essentially that left side of your body is getting left behind and having to work a bit harder to kind of stabilize things. You're overextending the left knee.
Your body works in slings, right?
And
opposites. So, you know, kind of like if you're dropping into kind of like the right leg, using that right quad more, you might actually be pressing against the handlebar more on that left side, which might be kind of, you know, shoulder, neck on that left side, stretching out that QL on that left side, overextending on the left, so you might get knee, like quad issues, etc., etc. And like, what was it? Colby calls them spirals, doesn't it? We see these spirals all the time. And the body generally works in opposites. Like if you're doing one thing more on one side, then, you know, each and every kind of like bias has a equal and opposite bias on the other side as well. So, you know, if you're doing more with your right lower body, chances are that your left upper body is getting it in the neck, sometimes literally. So all these things you can kind of start to piece together, is that, you know, what's going on? And it works the other way as well, you know, like, you know, it's not exclusively like right hip drop and kind of like left shoulder kind of like pressure, left hand pressure, it could be the other way. Depends on what you do, but you can look at this through kind of a more critical lens and start to understand your patterns over time if you're kind of like aware and just like, right, okay, I start to get tingling in my left hand and I start to go numb in my right foot. Like, okay, is that a trend? Is that a pattern that happens consistently? If so, you might want to start to think about, okay, well, why might that be? Is my bike position in a good place? Do I have kind of certain biases? What my feet doing? What my hips doing? What kind of maybe kind of causing this? And then you can start to work to kind of like even it out a bit.
And I think it's important to mention that what we've been exclusively talking about so far is what we call like functional asymmetries. So how your body moves, as opposed to structural asymmetries. So some people literally have one leg longer than the body, longer than the other. So their femur bone will be different on the right side to the left side, and you know that might exist in all parts of your body. And kind of leg length differences are particularly interesting to bike fitters because we're a leg-based sport. So you know, and we're attached to the bikes, and so, you know, if you've got a structural difference, I think most people know about structural differences because maybe it's been pointed out or there's been some pain at some point.
I think a lot of people confuse structural differences with functional ones.
That happens too, but I think
if you have a structural one, you're more likely to know about it.
Yeah, and just because it does impact your day to day, and especially if you've had a trauma or an injury at some point, a break.
Especially a compound
surgery,
break.
You know, then there's clear, you know, reason for, you know, big structural differences. But some of them might be more subtle, and, you know, sometimes people can get away with them for, you know, 40 years, and they've never really noticed that, you know, they've got quite a big leg length difference. Because the body, again, it'll just compensate and find ways around it. But when you get to a situation where you have to function more symmetrically, then, you know, that's where these kind of asymmetries kind of show up. Yeah. So part of this should be an awareness for structural differences and functional differences. Functional differences, easy to solve, just get in the gym.
If only it were that simple.
But then this is where kind of strength and conditioning coaches, mobility coaches, movement coaches, Pilates teachers, yoga teachers, whatever it is, like all these people who work with kind of body movement become their weight in gold because they can kind of help you kind of balance things out. You know, if you think about yoga, one of the best thing about yoga is that actually you do things on one side of the body and then you do it on the other side of the body. And really it's a way to investigate what the differences are. Can I twist more to one side than the other? Oh, why is that then? And then do I just need to do more then to that side which is a little bit more restricted? And, you know, they're just ways of being curious, I think.
But I think that the main point is that functional differences can be worked upon. And, you know, a lot of the time, unless there has been significant trauma and something about the body has changed as a result of an event, sometimes you get someone who's born with a longer tibia, say, or a femur than the other, but usually it's because of some sort of traumatic intervention, shall we say. Normally it's mostly functional, just because life hits people hard. Like, you know, like I remember one guy fitting COVID who he was like a trader, and he was like working from home, and I was like, oh, how many screens do you have? Because he was like getting mental saddle sores just on one side, and it was like always on his left side. I was like, well, how many screens do you have? And he was like, I have 6. I was like, whoa, that's mental. I was like, well, which one do you look at? And he was like, as you're facing it, and he was like, oh, bottom left. I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of, and when I showed him how he was moving on the bike, his hips were so twisted, he was just slamming the left side of his pelvis into the saddle. It's like, that's why you're getting saddle sores, man. Like, look dead ahead. So a lot of this stuff can kind of be kind of life related and just function related. 100%. And just like, you know, what you do in life will mirror how you function on a bike.
100%. Like most of it is 100% just other life-related issues, like musicians, right? You're a musician, but like Chan's a musician.
Music is the most unergonomic thing that you can do, right? Because all the instruments are lopsided,
like one-sided or the other. If you play golf, you know, how often do golfers swap sides? Like never. And that's a massive rotational, single-sided kind of sport. Same with the rowing. If you're a footballer, which side do you kick off? You know, there will be a leg that you kind of stand on to stabilize, and then the other leg will be there to create the force to kick the football. You know, how often does that change? Like, you know.
I think the other thing as well is like relative to like, you know, the hours in a week that we spend doing life relative to the hours in a week we spend riding bikes. Like, it's so disproportionate. Like, life is going to have way more of an impact on how you ride your bike than, you know, just moving bits of your bike around, essentially. So, it's something to kind of think about. It's like, you know, what do you do? What are your idiosyncrasies of how you move through your day?
Yeah.
how you sit, how you hold yourself, what do you do with your hands, your feet.
Which side do you carry your baby on?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing for you at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, like, which side do you use the mouse with? Like, which do you hold the phone if you're on the phone all the time? Like, all this kind of stuff has a massive effect on how you interact with a very odd symmetrical object.
Yeah, and it only matters because cycling's so closed, such a closed environment. So I think people with structural asymmetries quite often just get through life because life is open chain. Like, you're not stuck within like a handlebar or clipped into pedals and stuck on a seat. You can move your body in lots and lots of different ways, and so your body finds a way of just kind of dealing with that kind of asymmetry, and it maybe it doesn't really matter like day to day, but when it comes to riding bikes, you gotta pay attention to these things. Right. And then this gives you the prompt whether to be, if you've got a structural difference, then a bike fitter's job is to usually accommodate that structural difference in order to make them feel more balanced, in order to pedal more symmetrically within the symmetrical environment that you're in. But if it's a functional difference that you have or challenge, then you do kind of have a choice. You can choose to go down the functional route of like, okay, I'm going to change my body to be more balanced, have more capacity to do more, or you can decide to go down the accommodation route. Like, well, I'm just going to get the fitter to, put the, asymmetric saddle on, the one that molds around your butt, and, maybe lift one hood up a little bit more and, put a kind of wedge in my shoe to accommodate this kind of asymmetric movement. And the difficulty with that is, as we've talked about earlier, is that you just get stuck in that asymmetry. There's no opportunity to move away from it.
Well, put it this way, your lack of capacity will catch up with you at some point.
Yeah.
And when it does, don't come crying to me.
Because
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. And it's worth reiterating, we care about asymmetry because, we are loading your body. And if there's some asymmetry, then you're loading one part of your body more than the other. And we're not load sharing. We're not sharing that load equally. We're kind of overloading one kind of muscular system, one side of the body, one fascial system, more than the other side. And so at some point, it will get overloaded. If you do enough riding, you ride hard enough, or, whatever it is. And so, again, just being aware of that.
Whew. There's a lot to cover, isn't it?
Yeah. If you've made it through this far, congratulations.
Well
done.
Time to go to the gym.
Yeah. And I think one last thing I'd say, we keep banging on about the gym because the gym becomes actually what I think as a safe environment to explore.
Yeah.
You have lots and lots of tools, mirrors, heavy weights, things like that, to understand your body a little bit better. If you put like a barbell on your back and you've got, the same weight on each side, but you keep listing to one side, then that's a great clue as to kind of where your body asymmetries may be, and then, finding a way to kind of change it. And you can be more controlled and, just safer.
Think of the gym as your laboratory.
Yeah.
In which you can experiment and test.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot of knowledge just by squatting in front of a mirror. You don't even have to have a weight on your back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps, but you can get a lot of knowledge just by looking at yourself in the mirror.
Literally holding up the mirror
of how you move.
Yeah. Or even better, get a friend to kind of video you. Like the video,
Well, our most valuable tool is our iPad, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you can play back an image to someone and they can see it straight away. They might not be able to feel it, but you can see it.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, there you go.
You are responsible for your own destiny.
Hopefully that was useful for some of you guys out there. You got something out of it. I'm sure I'm going to get lots of questions from this
Your
one.
inbox is going to be quite the sight after this.
We probably said some things that probably raged some physios and like kind of movement coaches. So yeah,
I'm there for it though.
Yeah,
I'm there for it.
but also, you know, we're not physios. We're not like kind of qualified doctors or anything. But you know, we just see movement, and I guess we're just showing you what we can see or telling you what we can see on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, let me know, and yeah, maybe we'll do a part 4, shall we? Yeah, why not? All right, tune in next week. See you then.
If you made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Wei or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time, keep on spinning.